All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope all of you guys had a great week. One last video before we head into the playoffs tomorrow. I just logistically, with me traveling out of the country tomorrow, I can't stay up late tonight to wait for the play-in games. So what I'm going to do is kind of similar to what I did with the Celtics and Sixers yesterday. I'm just going to focus on what I'll be looking for with the Bucks and the Nuggets in their first round series. They're going to be massive favorites no matter what. Very, very likely to advance to the second round. So the matchup doesn't matter so much as what I'll be looking for from these teams as they progress into tougher matchups into the future. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Volume's YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss any show announcements or video breakdowns that I do. And last but not least, if for whatever reason you guys missed one of these videos and you can't get back over to YouTube to finish, don't forget you can find them wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. All right, so the Milwaukee Bucks. I expect the Bulls to win tonight. But I'll be rooting for Miami just because I think Miami, from a matchup perspective, should be able to give the Bucks at least a little bit more of an entertaining series, but both teams are going to get beat. In the season series, it was a 2-2 for both matchups. I'm going to be picking the Bucks in 5 regardless of who they face. Generally speaking, I'm going to go in 5 regardless of the advantage just because of home court in the NBA playoffs and teams riding that wave to an upset win typically. As you guys noticed, the 2 sweeps I picked in the first round or the Nets and the Clippers, teams that I view at a big disadvantage and that don't have a great home court advantage to lean on to try to win a big game. A couple of things I'm going to be looking for the Bucks as like indicators of them being prepped or ready for a long playoff run. Number 1, how does Chris Middleton look? We know this Bucks team is much better off the ball than they were last year, right? Obviously, Chris Middleton being there after not being there, regardless of what's going on with him and his ability to score, he's going to be able to knock down open threes. Javon Carter is shooting better than he did last year. Joe Ingles is shooting 41% from 3 in a Bucks uniform. Jay Crowder's not the same physical presence that PJ Tucker was a couple years ago, but he's a better offensive player in my opinion. And the Bucks as a team are 8th in spot-up efficiency. But why I'm looking at Chris Middleton is, Boston's gotten a little bit better. The reality is last year's series with the Celtics really came down to just a very slight gap in half-court efficiency. When the Celtics could keep the Bucks out of transition, they were a better team in the half-court. And like we've talked about all season long, obviously the spot-up shooting is a part of it, but there are little things you can do to grind out additional points over the course of a game. I've always talked about the difference between like a 112 offensive rating and a 117, 118 offensive rating in many cases is shot making. Having guys that can rescue possessions, late shot clock situations or late game situations where when a defense is perfect, because at the end of a game, a locked-in defense is not going to give up anything easy. You need guys who can make tough shots. And that's what Chris Middleton does for this specific team. That's going to be the difference between the Bucks hoisting the trophy and them losing somewhere on the way. In my opinion, is going to be, can Chris Middleton get 80% of to where he was in that 2021 playoff series. So he's got a month to get there, 2 full series, because they're going to be heavy favorites in the first round and in the second round. As much as I like that Knicks team that I'm picking to beat the Cavs, and as much as I like the Cavs team, those 2 teams are not going to beat the Bucks in all likelihood. So they've got a month here to try to get him rounded into shape. He did tweak his knee and he underwent an MRI, but it looks like he's going to play in game 1, so that's good. But I'm going to be really watching just the way his lift looks and how he's able to get separation and just how he looks overall athletically in that first round series. Number 2, can Joe Ingles and Jay Crowder contain on the perimeter? Specifically, I'm worried about this with Boston. Boston's going to have the ability, especially when they go small with Al Horford, to pull Brook Lopez away from the rim and really attack them from a 5-out standpoint. There's going to be lineups out there where it's going to be Horford, Tatum, Brown with like Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon, or Marcus Smart and Derek White, or Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon. And in those situations, conceding corner threes to Al Horford is a fool's errand. And it's even possible that Milwaukee may even have to go small and put Giannis at center in that case. So because of that, the further Brook Lopez is away from the basket, or if he's off the floor, the more important it is to contain on the perimeter. And Joe Ingles, in his absolute athletic prime, was an excellent perimeter defender, and so was Jay Crowder. But both of those guys are a little bit on the other side of the hill. And I think specifically with Ingles, Crowder could end up not playing much at all over the course of this playoff run. We'll see. But specifically with Ingles, I think his second side shot creation, his ability to run action with the basketball in his hands, and him being lights out from three makes him an option that needs to be on the table as an offensive adjustment. And he needs, in order for him to be playable, he can't be a target on the other end of the floor. If he can't at least provide some resistance at the point of attack if he gets switched onto a guard or against one of the Jays for Boston, it could be a problem. So I'm really going to be watching athletically just how Joe Ingles in particular, but also a little bit of Jay Crowder, how those two guys perform on the perimeter defensively. And last but not least, how consistent will Jrue Holiday be with his shot making? Last year in the playoffs, Jrue Holiday went for 20 plus 5 times. He had some big games, made some big shots, but he shot below 40% in 7 of the 12 games and had some nightmarishly poor shooting nights. And again, part of that is Chris Middleton being out, him being the only real secondary shot creator on that team. But Jrue Holiday in general tends to be a little bit inconsistent with his shot making. And so I'm going to be watching him just to see how efficient he is, how he can rein things back now that they have Chris Middleton. Look at his shot selection. Jrue Holiday has a tendency sometimes to just, for no particular reason, take extremely difficult pull-up jump shots, almost as like a regular part of his shot diet, which when you do that and you're a talented player, sometimes they go in and sometimes they don't. Guys who are regularly efficient are guys that rely on extremely difficult shot making only when they have to. It's a supplementary piece, not a core piece of their offense. So I'll be watching Jrue Holiday. I do think that getting the 1 seed was big time for Milwaukee. I talked a lot about this during the season, but they're going to be in a series where they're heavily favored against the Cavs or Knicks team in the second round, while Boston and Philly are beating the shit out of each other, and that's a big advantage. So nice work from the Bucks to fight for that 1 seed throughout the season. Denver. I think that very similarly to to what I said about the Bulls and Heat, I think Minnesota is going to win tonight against the Thunder. But I actually think the Thunder are the more dangerous team for the Nuggets because of their aggregate offensive skill and the trouble they can give to defenses that perform well statistically but have some personnel limitations. Like the Pelicans we talked a lot about in this morning's show. If you guys remember, I talked about how the Pelicans were 4th in defense post-deadline, 6th in defense for the season, but the Thunder just lit them on fire because they spaced them out and drove and kicked them to death. You know, in the playoffs, your base defensive scheme becomes less important than your defensive versatility and the overall strength of your defensive personnel. That's going to be an issue here with Denver. Denver overall this season defensively wasn't good enough. And one of the big reasons I didn't pick them out of the West is that in this tail end of the season, they really let slip a lot of their habits on the defensive end of the floor and got sloppy as they kind of punted the last, 20% of the season or whatever it was. And the problem there is when you don't have outstanding defensive personnel, your details have to be extremely sharp. My favorite example of this is the 2016 Cavs versus the 2017 Cavs. That team did not have great defensive personnel. Kyrie Irving is an average to below average defender. J.R. Smith is an average to below average defender. Kevin Love is an average to below average defender. Tristan Thompson was only okay. LeBron James and whoever they played at, like Richard Jefferson at the time, were the only two really good defensive players on that team. But as a team, they really worked hard during the season to dial up those defensive details, and they finished as a top 10 defense in the regular season. So when they got to the Golden State series, even though they got a little bit shell-shocked at the beginning of the series, they were locked in enough to get the necessary amount of stops for LeBron James and Kyrie Irving to carry them home offensively. Then in 2017, they just said, screw it, and they stopped trying. And the same defensive team that was so good in 2016 was really bad in 2017 with basically the same personnel. And that's because habits matter so much more when you don't have great defensive personnel. If you have excellent defensive personnel, at a certain point, you just flying around athletically is going to make a lot of things happen. That's kind of the way I feel about Denver. If you're going to have Nikola Jokic as a below-average rim protector, and you're going to have basically 2 good defensive players in your best lineup, which is basically Aaron Gordon and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you have 3 entry points there. So the only way that's going to work is if all 5 of those guys are just dialed in and locked in throughout the entire season, working on those details so they're ready to go when the time comes. And that's just not what they did this year. And that was a big part of why I did not pick them out of the West. The Thunder in particular are going to force them to guard in a way that goes away from their defensive scheme, as opposed to Minnesota is going to allow them to stay in a lot of the coverages that they used throughout the regular season. So Denver fans should absolutely be rooting for Minnesota tonight. That said, regardless of who they face, even with those limitations, I still would pick them in 5 over both of these teams. If the Nuggets get exposed offensively, it'll be by Phoenix in the next round. But that's step 1 of what I'm going to be watching in this first round series. How locked in is Denver going to be on the defensive details? Because this is basically a 2-week practice. You're going to get probably 4 or 5 games here, to maybe 6 if you're not sharp enough. But you're going to get 2 weeks here to sharpen up your defense and try to undo the damage that you did during the regular season. I'd almost treat it like a training camp in that regard. But they're going to have to be sharp or they're going to get beat by Phoenix. So I'm going to be watching their defense at all 3 levels in this series to see how dedicated they are to tightening those things up. Nikola Jokic, how high is he willing to come out of his drop? Because he's going to have to come high out of his drop to have any hope of defending against the Phoenix Suns. When he does so, can he do so effectively? How active is he overall defensively, sprinting back in transition and covering ground on the floor? How active is Jamal Murray at the point of attack? Is he up to that challenge? I know Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is up to the challenge. I know Aaron Gordon's going to be up to the challenge as a help defender and as a primary wing defender. But is Jamal Murray up to the challenge as a point of attack defender? Is Michael Porter Jr. up to the challenge as a help defender? Are they going to have to go with options like Bruce Brown because of defensive limitations that takes away from their offensive ceiling? Those are the kinds of things that I'm going to be paying very close attention to in that first round series. Number 2, Jamal Murray's shot making. It's been a very up and down season for him. Not his fault necessarily. First chunk of the season, he's working his way back from a knee injury. Second chunk of the season, he had some brief stretches where his knee kind of flared up a little bit. So I'm not blaming him per se, but the reality is if the Nuggets are going to get out of the Western Conference and have a chance to win an NBA championship, they need Jamal Murray to play at not a superstar, but an all-star level. They need him to efficiently average 23, 24 points per game. So I'm going to be watching him and how he looks athletically. 2 more things. Jokic's aggression when his teammates are missing. One of the things that I've been critical of Jokic this year is some of that early LeBron stuff where he's playmaking to death, but there are some times when your team just doesn't have it. And you're Nikola damn Jokic. You're one of the top 5 players in the league. You need to go make something happen off the bounce. And so there have been a couple of games this year where I've seen him kind of continue to pass. And I'm really going to be watching him, especially on nights when his teammates are not making shots, to see if he steps up his level of aggression. And last but not least, the bench. The bench has been a huge issue for the Nuggets all season long. The Thomas Bryant acquisition has not worked. Reggie Jackson has been really inconsistent since he came aboard. They're going to have to play the starters big minutes and do some more staggering to bolster that bench unit, or they could be in some trouble there as well. But either way, I'm picking the Bucks and the Nuggets to win in 5. So again, predictions are just predictions. Probably going to get a certain amount of them right. Probably going to get a certain amount of them wrong. That's just the nature of the business. I'm sure I'll have people crying about it in my mentions no matter what, but that's just life. Final predictions though. I have the Bucks winning their first round series in 5 games. Celtics in 5 games, Sixers in 4 games, Knicks in 6 games. Out in the Western Conference, I have the Nuggets in 5 games. I have the Lakers beating the Grizzlies in 6 games. I have the Warriors beating the Kings in 6 games. And I have the Suns sweeping the Clippers. As of right now, I have the Golden State Warriors coming out of the West, the Bucks coming out of the East, and the Bucks hoisting the trophy when it's all said and done. That said, I don't see any point in going down with the ship. With every passing new piece of information that we get, I am going to tell you what my new opinion is. And maybe at the end of the day, it'll still be Bucks Warriors, but I'm going to react to new information. And so after the first round, we'll kind of circle back to those topics and see where we stand at that point. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Here's the plan for this weekend. My flight does not arrive in Canada until almost 11 p.m. tomorrow night. Then I have to clear customs. Then I have to go through baggage claim because I'm bringing skis with me. So, I realistically won't be getting to my hotel until almost midnight. So I'm not going. A lot of my staff works on the East Coast. I'm not going to make them stay up till 3 a.m. So I am going to record something that night, but it won't be uploaded until the following morning. I'm probably just going to hit the late game. Probably just going to hit Warriors Kings game 1. Then it'll be up in the morning when you guys wake up. When I wake up on Sunday morning, I will watch all the film from the other 3 games and record another video on that. Then Sunday night, after all of the games on Sunday, we will be going live on AMP, I'm pretty sure, provided the Wi-Fi permits, right after the game. If not, it'll just go up on YouTube roughly half hour after the final game. So we'll get back into our normal cadence after that. I just have to deal with some travel-related logistics tomorrow. But that's the plan as we head into this week. And then once I get back from this trip, it'll just be our normal cadence like we had last year. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you early in the morning on Sunday.